What's truncal acne, Gloria?
It's acne on your body. I was going to say acne on your trunk.
The trunk.
The trunk. All right, we're going. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Chemist Confessions podcast, a human conversations on all things skincare science. I'm Gloria.
I'm Victoria.
And today is all about acne.
Woo, we're getting into the meats.
Yeah, the meat is a dense one, so we'll dive right in. But before we get to the meat, we'll share a few nice words, and I have a quick disclaimer to make. For people listening to this, watching this podcast on YouTube, you might notice that I'm very shiny today.
Looking extra dewy today, Gloria. What are you doing?
So you will see a slew of sunscreen content that we are doing in May. We are doing a 30-day 30 sunscreen challenge where we just test a bunch of sunscreen, give our feels on them. We'll test the wash off with our blank slate. Just, kind of to kick off the hotter seasons. And today I'm trialing one of the most... I don't even know how to describe it, sunscreens. It was so slippery. It's still sitting on my face. It
not really absorbing.
Yeah, it's not going in at all. And Victoria was watching me squeal at the UV camera. I'm like, why? Why won't it go into my skin?
Yeah, you might see a clip of me creepily recording Gloria as she is freaking out that the sunscreen is not absorbing. But yes, that explains her extra dewy look today.
Yeah, it's been an hour since I put it on my face. It's still shiny. Guess who's not getting 5 stars from me?
All right, but anyways, we should get into some nice words before we start the meat.
Yes.
We actually are going to feature a 4-star review. How's that for transparency? And it's going to be about our double play.
Cool. The title goes, great, my sensitive dry skin struggles a little though. I needed to switch to something less intense than adapalene that I've been using. So I tried this. I love how it makes my skin feel and it is great for my sensitive skin, except that I need to use it only every other night. I've tried increasing the frequency, but when I do, my eyelids swell. This is a problem I find with all retinol products though, so I don't blame the product so much as my skin. But I've been using it every other night with great success. Beautiful packaging, and I love the pump applicator.
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, I was like, eyelid swell. Do you think it's getting too close to the eyelid area?
Maybe, or I kind of find that because usually when I use double play around the eye area, I don't put it over my top eyelid, but I do apply pretty close to make sure I get the whole crow's feet area.
Yeah.
So I'm sure some runs over just a little bit.
Sure.
If you're extra sensitive, I can see that.
Yeah, no. I mean, honestly, it's still a great review. We actually have gotten questions before on whether or not it was safe to place on the eyelid, and we would say no, don't do that. That's for under eye and crow's feet only. The eyelid area is so thin. So it's definitely not recommended. But otherwise, thank you for the honest review.
And I would also add that I think it's great that she finds her frequency with it. She uses it every other night, can ring it in. I think that's great. And it's a reminder that everyone's retinol journey is unique. You don't need to dial up to a 1% retinol every night just because someone else is.
Totally. All right, moving on. This is one of our very first reviews on the experiment kit. For those of you that don't know, we launched this about a few weeks ago.
They probably don't know because we don't talk about it very much.
I mean, we're trying. But anyways, since you don't know, this is the replacement of the Travel Buddy and the box of goodies. We've been working on doing a sample kit so people can get easy access to our products and really learn to mix and match and find their perfect combination. And in the experiment kit, you get blank slate, Aquafix, moisturizer, Mr. Reliable, and the Better Oil. And then you get to choose your exfoliator booster to go with. So for this one, she writes, great option to try out different products. I've already used all of these formulas before, so I mainly bought this to have some travel size products on hand. I like that the better oil is in a small dropper bottle. Previous iterations of this sample kit had a roller ball dispenser for the oil, and she's absolutely right. I've loved pretty much everything I've used from this brand, so definitely pick up one of these packs if you're curious about trying these out. Yeah. Yes, it used to come in a roller ball. That was interesting. Had a lot of questions there.
We get so many emails about like, the ball stuck. What do I do? And we're like, oh no.
Yeah, so we moved on. And I did want to add that the bottles that you use that are in the experiment kit, feel free to wash those. You can actually remove the plug and then you can rinse those out. They're PP. And so I sometimes will use that to hold other samples. So that's one way to reuse the kit. But otherwise, thanks for the review. And like always, we just want to say we're really proud of all our reviews. Please take a look. If you're curious in our products, a lot of our users share their routine to go with it, which is really insightful. We don't pay for any of them. So we really appreciate all that do fill out reviews for us. And we definitely want to reward our podcast listeners. Mm-hmm. So if you are interested in trying out our line, please use the promo code CCPodcast 2023. We have not updated it yet, so get it today. 15% off.
As you can see, we haven't come up with what the new reward will be, but this code still works. So check out our line.
All right. So anyways, we're going to get into the meat because it's going to be a little bit long, but today is all about acne.
Gloria's gonna be mute. No, I'm just gonna chill here.
Gloria's not gonna be mute because there's a lot going on here.
I'm shiny in solidarity.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna do just a quick snapshot. These are all the culprits that add to and cause acne. So there are 4 of them.
Yeah, so this is a good way. We love good biology breakdowns because it's a good way to think about your routine, making sure you have all your bases covered.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not every skin concern is super well understood.
Yep.
Happy to say acne, even though it's a difficult one, but it is one of the most well-studied skin concerns.
That's true.
The 4 main causes of acne are, number 1, increased sebum production. Mm-hmm. This is, of course, a no-brainer. A lot of people with oily skin tend to experience more acne, and the excess sebum directly increases the likelihood of clogged pores and eventually acne.
Yep. Number 2 is hyperkeratinization. That's just a fancy word for buildup of keratinocytes. And this is what creates congestions and essentially clogs your pore. And this is very important because it creates a perfect environment for bacteria.
Yep, which leads to number 3, C. acnes overgrowth. C. acnes, the C stands for Cutibacterium. It used to be called P. acnes, but they kind of pulled away the acnes line a little bit closer and renamed it to C. acnes. This is what people associate the most with acne. Usually you hear a lot about antimicrobial actives.
Yes.
And a lot of times, I guess I feel like people our age or rite of passage is very aggressively washing your face. Yep. And you hear a lot about like there's too much bacteria.
What makes people think their face is very dirty.
Yes. But this is definitely just one of them. And I would say all of them are interlinked, and say the increased sebum production can lead to an environment that promotes C. acnes overgrowth, and it kind of becomes a vicious cycle there.
Yep. C. acnes actually love to feed on sebum, so this is why it's kind of a vicious cycle. And then what kind of just is a cherry on top to this perfect ecosystem is inflammation, and that can really exacerbate, the symptoms of acne. So these are the 4 main culprits, and we just want to review this for everyone. We'll leave our cutesy diagram here, just so everyone can have a place of reference for all of this other material we're about to talk about. But overall, we're not going to dive too much into the biology today, because honestly, Gloria and I did a really good job last time.
Really painful, painstaking job. Was that the product of like a quarantine sesh we did in Asia?
I think so. Yeah, it was, honestly, I think it's great. It's, we were able to review not only the biology, we actually looked into scarring as well. And definitely check back to episode 27. You're wondering how the numbers, yes, the very whimsy numbers for acne and their scars, and also check out the blog article. Let's just say, like Gloria said, there is so much more than just killing off the cutie bacteria, which is so 2000. So now there's definitely, it requires a holistic approach. And yeah. So for the meat part 1, we actually want to focus on any acne updates because, like Gloria said, a lot of the attention gets focused on treating acne. So there are some studies out there.
Yeah. The first one is microbiome. So like we talked about, C. acnes is a direct culprit to acne. So in terms of skin microbiome work, there's been a lot of research focused around C. acnes, what kind of environment promotes it. I think there's a lot of products out there that talks about promoting the good bacteria as opposed to the ones you don't want. It's a dense field, and I think you can still find our old episodes around microbiome. It's an area that we think holds a lot of promise, and we're hoping that it can help promote, a more holistic approach to taking care of microbiome. However, these type of research take time, and there hasn't been a lot of new news or new hard takeaways. It's kind of like a still work in progress type of area.
Yeah, I think it's like they're getting there. They're looking at the genotyping of, and it's just, there's all these things, and they're also looking at it from different angles. They're looking at your actual gut flora, the ingestion of things to promote and your gut flora and how that relates to acne. There's also looking at skin flora, because we all know that flora of different parts of the body are actually quite different. But there hasn't been any direct hard link. So at this point, for Gloria and I, we're kind of just like, okay, keep on going.
Us posted. Let us know.
Yeah, so we won't spend too much time here. There's actually a recent review paper that actually looked at diet and acne, which is something that people really focus on, actually myself included. So I did want to share this study where they looked at about 410 articles. But what's interesting is out of that 410, only 34 articles met the inclusion criteria. Yeah. How they ruled it out was, one, they found the paper didn't actually quite discuss the relationship between that diet and acne itself. Yeah. And then the review paper, they had to exclude other review papers because there are actually a lot out there. And then also they excluded papers that were in English or were blocked. And somehow they got to 34.
I like that. They're like, oh no, it's blocked. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. So the other thing to note here is that half of the studies they looked at were conducted in nations of predominantly Western diet. And then in terms of conclusion, I did want to share another edition of Their Words, Not Ours. In the most PC way, they write, these studies had a higher assigned strength of evidence, and their conclusions were backed by numerous RCTs that demonstrated either significant improvement in acne with the adoption of low GI diet. So this is like their most general takeaway of the entire review paper is that
from 34 papers.
They looked at low GI, they looked at dairy, and then of all of these papers, the only thing they could truly tie it to was a low glycemic index. Might have a positive correlation to acne, but everything else is kind of...
Did they look at other stuff? So growing up, you hear a lot about, it's almost like it's kind of like voodoo or like a certain superstition, kind of like, ooh, you can't look at fried food the wrong way or else you'll grow acne. Yes. So I think growing up, the one that I always hear about is you can't eat fried food or you can't eat too much sweets or like chocolate. Did they look at those too? They did, but they didn't. I think they were also looking at quantity as well. And so for them, they felt like the bigger focus with more robust amount of data was actually around dairy and the glycemic index. Got it.
Yeah. So that, and then from that, of the 410, they whittled down to 34. And then their conclusion is low glycemic index might be helpful.
Oh, okay. Actually, I think that's super interesting because I think when we were looking into low GI diets, it definitely had more data than
Yes.
a lot of other stuff,
exactly.
including like glycation, right?
Yes, exactly, and aging. So I think also because there's a lot more attention on the glycemic index, I think that
from different
creates
angles
more,
too,
data around that.
Yeah.
And I did want to quote another thing they wrote about dairy, which I think Gloria and I have talked about this before. Sometimes the conclusions of review papers and publications, Gloria and I will not always agree. But this is what they wrote about dairy. They write, unfortunately, we could not identify any RCTs on the topic and instead had to base our conclusions on the observational studies, which varied widely in terms of exposure, assessment, and reported results. But even though they say this, they said dairy could be a factor in acne. And we're like,
based on what evidence?
Wait, no, it's inconclusive. So the reason why is because they feel like, because a lot of it has focused on the Western diet, that it's your ethnicity, your genes can be a factor. And they think that those who are on a Western diet, dairy could be an impact because that's more in their diet. But I actually found that very odd because in Asian diets, there's very little dairy and a lot of us are lactose intolerant. And I feel like that should be the opposite. Like it would be that Eastern diets might actually have a worse reaction, but there's just no data. So again, inconclusive, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. It's kind of frustrating sometimes too when we do our research. Yeah. We can't just read the abstract, the takeaway, and be like, oh, okay. A lot of times we'll have to pull into the full paper, go through the actual data, and then read the conclusion and go, why? Why is this a takeaway?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's at least the latest update on diet stuff. But I think the thing that is actually more exciting for Gloria and I is they're finally starting to look into truncal acne. What's truncal acne, Gloria?
It's acne on your body. I was going to say acne on your trunk.
The trunk.
The trunk.
It's not very...
the neck down trunk.
The description is not very good.
You got truncal acne. I'm what?
Yeah, and honestly, I really like this because personally I deal with this myself. And I do feel like body acne, bacne is it's definitely the forgotten child of all acne issues. But I think it can make people so self-conscious, and it also can dictate the outfits you wear. I think this is a great thing that they're finally starting to look at it and realizing there are a couple differences, because a lot of times they'll just be like, oh, whatever you use on your face.
Acne.
Yeah, whatever you use on your face, you use on your body. So I actually did want to share a couple stats. So they actually have studied that 48 to 52% of acne patients suffer from truncal acne. And there seems to be a slight male predominance, but it is known to occur in both adolescent and adults. And then in terms of mechanism, the most interesting thing is sebum secretion.
Yeah, it says the sebum secretion is lower in the truncal area, which makes sense, and doesn't play a big part in pathogenesis, which has researchers theorizing that the flora and C. acne's overgrowth is a major cause here. Again, this is great and really good, important for us to take in consideration, consider the four main areas of concern here. So remember how we just say C. acne is not the end-all be-all. Still true for your face, but might be a much bigger factor for your body. And I will say my husband gets a good amount of body acne. You definitely know when he was too lazy to shower. He usually does. He's really good about that. But there's a few times he falls asleep before he showers. Like even hours. I'm talking about coming back from the gym, then falling asleep. And then waking up to shower before going to bed. Even that amount of time kind of factors in for him. If he stays dirty for longer than an hour, his body acne will flare up.
Totally. And this is why maybe some of you are aware that when you sweat or let's say you go to school, you're off to college, you're wearing a backpack and it's hot outside and you sweat. It's stuff that actually could contribute. They are just starting to, again, like we said, this clearly is an element of microbiome tied to this, but it is something that they are looking at. But yeah, all of that could matter. And I think what I really liked in a study, they actually referenced a couple actual clinicals, and they actually looked at testing a 5.3% BPO emollient foam, and this is something that they're going to leave on every night, versus an 8% BPO wash. And they actually found that the nightly topical was significantly more effective. And I think reading that for us, it's like very clear that it's like, yeah, acne washes in the body area might actually not be very helpful at all.
Yeah, I want to say that generally speaking, wash-offs don't do as well as leave-on, though acne washes are much more validated than other types of medicated washes.
Much more is like,
air quotes.
Better.
Yeah. It's much better understood. I think
the bar is very low.
Yes. we tell people all the time we're doing cleanser in our next episode, so we'll get into it more next episode. Yeah. But I do think there is a certain amount. I think there's a misconception out there that acne washes work just as well as topicals. Yep. This is absolutely not the case here.
Yep, totally. They also cited another clinical that actually looked at azelaic acid for the body. They did a 12-week treatment of 20% azelaic acid, and they did find that to be helpful. And there's even another paper that did 15%, and that amount also was helpful. So that's a topical maybe that could look into. But I think one of the really important takeaways is that they acknowledge that body acne tends to have a much slower response to treatment than face. And yes.
Well, that's irritating.
Yeah. And I think I think that's totally true, because I mean, the rate at which you see an acne lesion on your face disappear or kind of like move on to healing phase is so quick. But on my chest and back, it is so stubborn. Yeah.
How long would you say the bacne or body acne cycle is?
I think usually probably like 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Does it stay in the inflamed stage?
It stays in the inflammatory phase for much longer.
Oh,
so like
my God.
usually inflammatory is like maybe 2-3 days. Then you'll see like it's not red anymore. It could be inflamed for a week. Yeah.
Oh no. I hate Alvina. The sunscreen is so bad. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So speaking of that, we do, we're talking about washes.
Yeah.
We should talk about washes for acne in general.
Yes.
And kind of going back to like what you were saying about like the cleanser data and whatnot.
Yeah. So of all the cleansers out there, like say cell acid cleansers have a lot more data than anything else that comes with actives in the cleanser format. And especially in particularly cell acid, they show that, it is effective in reducing acne lesions over time. But we still see it as a secondary active, a secondary product format to having acne, because, you'll see a lot of videos talking about how, with Panoxyl, which is a BPO wash, you're supposed to leave it on your face a little longer before you wash it off. Then I ask, why not just use topical BPO? If you have to have a timer and mask with your cleanser, isn't the cleanser format just there for convenience-y reason? So yeah, I think at least my personal take, and my hot take as someone who doesn't really get acne, is I would use a cell acid wash to supplement the routine, since cell acid topicals I find to be a little lukewarm anyway. But that's it, right? Yeah. Like, I don't think anyone should look at a medicated acne cleanser or like an OTC acne cleanser and think the
cleanser will be my saving grace.
Exactly. Yeah. I think there are people out there that is the entry point product. Like, okay, this is an acne wash. Yeah. And that's it. They won't have a topical treatment. And I think that kind of routine is very lacking.
Totally. And I think usually the idea is that sometimes when you're onboarding, your retinoids for acne that are
sorry, I know, I'm tearing up.
Yeah, so sometimes when you are onboarding retinoids, you definitely can encounter some stinging, some sensitivity, and this is where if you're trying to use other cocktails of ingredients, a cleanser instead of an added topical can be helpful. But that's really it. It's like you have to know that you're really almost like downgrading whatever active you're using in a wash off versus a leave on. So that's really it. It's more like it is an added slot to get a even more diverse cocktail of acne treatments, but yeah, don't like make that the priority for sure. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
All right. And then the last update we have on acne is that they are actually starting to broaden the skin types that they were looking at for treating acne and post-acne marks. And this is incredibly important for post-acne marks in people of color. And in the realm of people of color, they are including Hispanic, Asian, Black, and Indian. And the reason why this is good for us is because post-acne marks in people of color actually can be much more stubborn. And so this is really, it's not really that there's a real finding here. It's more that there is now a body of people that are now looking to diversify our understanding. And we think this is a good thing. So think of it as like science news, I guess.
This is super exciting because even though this is just kind of scratching the surface of understanding different tendencies and different skin types, but it's still like a step in the right directions for us to understand if there's any, any good takeaways that's more ethnicity based. And from the study, it broke it down. It actually I find it really interesting because I didn't expect the number to be that jarring. I always knew that darker skin tones more prone to post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, but the numbers is a lot higher than I thought.
Yeah, so in terms of prevalence, they found that hyperpigmentation was more prevalent in Black women. That was 65%. Hispanic is 48%. White is 25%. Asian is 18%, which I thought would be a lot higher. And Indian is 10%.
Oh, I also thought would be a lot higher.
Yeah. And PIH was, and then what they did was they supplemented that stat with kind of like a self-assessment of like, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this, I guess, skin concern? And then so the pH was found to be more bothersome to Black women was 18%, Hispanic was 10.9%, and Asian was 7.4%. And then white Caucasian is 2.8%. Very low.
Super interesting. But I will say for fellow Asians out there, you might get less PAH, but don't worry, melasma is your best friend. So pigmentation, we'll save that for pigmentation episode. But I find it really interesting, and I guess a way to differentiate between different people's hyperpigmentation problems. I do think that the Indian stat really surprised me.
Yes,
because this kind of shows how the traditional Fitzpatrick scale is kind of lacking. Because I think based on just Fitzpatrick scale, a lot of times Hispanic people will get kind of categorized in the same bucket as Indian.
That's such a good point.
And so different here.
Yes, no, that's a really good point. And this is where I liked this paper because it really just addresses kind of like the pitfalls of our current evaluation techniques. And so one of the things that they talked about was how, in assessing people of color and their acne, they actually have a really hard time differentiating PIH with erythema inflammation. Because they can't tell based on the coloring and it looks very similar. And so this is where they are working on addressing these challenges and how to identify like the red tones versus, if you think back to our dark circle episode where they talk about
different
hues,
undertones.
Yes, so browns, reds, purples, and I think pinks. Yeah, they're trying to figure out how they can better assess, because that also plays a really big part in treating the condition and then also treating PIH. So yeah.
Super fascinating.
Yeah. But we definitely should remind everyone of, I guess, the general things to keep in mind for melanin-enriched skin when using some of these actives.
Low and slow and patience is key. This is a little bit unfortunate. I think I first heard the stat that people of color, people with darker skin are more prone to PIH when I was working on a chemical peel project.
Yeah.
Because even though chemical peels are supposed to be that pretty powerful weapon you can use to tackle hyperpigmentation, it's a double-edged sword because you want it to be in depth enough and powerful enough to lift and target those concerns. But in people of color, if it's too aggressive, it gives you more pigmentation because now your skin is too inflamed. So this is definitely where you want to take extra care of your skin barrier.
Yeah, definitely. And then also, you know, there are still prescription level hydroquinone. Everyone knows that you can have that halo effect, the hypopigmentation that can occur. So if that's something you're also looking into, definitely make sure you're partnered with a good derm that can help you monitor your progress. But yeah, those I'd say would be the two main things to keep in mind.
Yeah. So vitamin C will be your friend because it's less likely that it will be too irritating, but something like a more vanilla topical vitamin C or daily exfoliant, it just won't get you that super speedy, complete recovery that you might be looking for.
Totally. So sum us up, Gloria. In terms of me, part 1, sum us up.
Acne is here to stay. Long story short.
Thanks, Gloria.
Long story short, acne is a holistic problem. There's a lot of different biological angles you need to look at when you're when you're putting together your routine. And we'll get into more of that in Me Part 2 in terms of what are some things you should keep in mind when shopping for acne treatments. In terms of diet that you should be paying attention to, low GI might be something to consider. Wouldn't worry a lot about the other stuff. I remember a long time ago we found a chocolate study.
Yes, my favorite study of all.
They looked at someone eating 2 whole bars of chocolate
every day,
and it was inconclusive. So your typical
I'll have to share that study again.
Your typical intake of chocolate is probably under that, and you should probably be in the clear.
Yeah. And then in terms of truncal acne, definitely look for leave-on topicals versus wash-offs for possibly a better success rate. And then stay tuned for any findings on melanin-rich skin and acne.
Yep.
But otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. It's time to break. Cora's going to shut the happy
is dabbling her eyes for the podcast.
Okay, I'm going to do it. Break it up.
Who made this runny ass sunscreen? Oh my god.
All right, it's Animal Fun Fact Corner.
Woo!
And today we are talking about the Quetzal. It's Quetzal.
Oh my god. You know what this was? It was a summoned monster in Final Fantasy VIII. I never knew what it was.
Now we know where it comes from.
It's a bird.
But it makes a lot of sense because this bird is beautiful. The male has a very long blue. It's kind of got this aquamarine blue-green color. The males have a beautiful long feathering. It's kind of like the peacock. The males are a lot prettier than the females, or more decorative.
I find that to be so interesting, and I think the human equivalents, like, have you noticed that all your male friends seem to have better lashes than you? Like, they all have the curl, the density, and so I'm like,
yeah. But they got to do more work to find a mate, so yeah. So it's actually called the resplendent Quetzal, and it's found in Mexico and Central America, and it lives in tropical forests. Like I said, the males have the more decorative plumage with the long tails, while females actually have the short tail. Their coloring is not as vibrant, generally just this like emerald green. It is very pretty. Yeah. They live in tropical forests. They're predominantly fruit eaters, but they can feed on insects, frogs, lizards, and snails. The interesting thing, which I love this picture from Wikipedia, is they swallow their fruits whole and then later will regurgitate the pits to help disperse trees. And we'll show this female actually eating a whole wild avocado
Definitely
whole.
No gag reflexes there. Holy crap. That is not a small avocado.
Yeah. So in terms of breeding, they are monogamous. And the one thing that they are super particular about is that they must nest in trees that are in a strong stage of decomposition and decay.
That is a very specific request.
I don't know why, but it's in the research, and so basically, the more dead, the better. And then the parents actually take turns incubating. The male will generally incubate during the day, and then the female will incubate at night. What they've also noticed is that when the eggs hatch, the parents will also take turns feeding them. But what they've noticed is that males actually feed the hatchlings more food than the female.
Oh.
Yeah. I guess bigger amounts. And on top of that, chicks are often abandoned by the females near the end of the rearing period, and they end up leaving it to the male to continue caring for.
Oh no!
So the females here are kind of not completely in love with rearing children.
So this monogamy thing is just, my job here is done.
It's a job.
I see.
It's a job.
Oh no!
Yeah, so I found that kind of interesting. But otherwise, this beautiful bird, it is being threatened because of deforestation. But there's actually a lot of, I want to say, stories and historical, what's the word am I thinking? Like myths that are tied to these birds. And they're actually the national animal of Guatemala.
Cool.
Yeah.
Today we learned.
The Quetzal.
The Quetzal.
Yeah. So that's it. That's the Animal Fun Fact Corner.
Woo!
All right. And now.
Meat part two. Let's wrap this up so I can wash my face because I can't stand the sunscreen anymore.
Yeah, so today we are actually going to talk about some acne products. But one of the things I think Gloria and I quickly realized was no one actually helps you figure out, like, I guess how not severe or severe your acne breakout scenario really is.
That's a great question, because I think a lot of times when people come to us for acne advice, we'll give them a rundown of OTC or non-prescription products they can buy, like this and that, like what's your routine like, and we'll always follow up with, if it's severe enough, just don't forget that you should go to a derm and get your prescription goods. Yeah. But rarely do people ask, well, at what point, what is a definitive bad enough to go see a derm point?
Yeah, definitely. So we thought about this, and it turns out it's one big rabbit hole. There is actually a lot of papers that even look at how to correctly clinically assess acne. And so, again, another edition of Their Words, Not Ours. There is a review paper that looked at these grading systems, and they write, despite the availability of more than 25 grading systems for acne, the lack of a single standardized system consistently used in practice and research reflects their inability to fulfill these attributes. So clearly, even in the research and professional community, there's not really a standardized system.
Got it.
But the good thing is the FDA somehow does actually have recommendations on this. And they actually recommend looking at the IGA scale, which they call the Investigator's Global Assessment Scale. They would like to pair this with an actual comedone count, or your pimple count, basically.
Like actual quantitative, like count all the lesions. Got it.
It's their recommendation. Do clinics have to follow this? No.
Do they?
Does standardized testing have to do this? Not really. But it does mean, typically they actually do follow the IGA scale for that guidance. And if you're wondering what the IGA scale entails, it's a grading scale of 0 to 4. This is where they're solely looking at a qualitative visual assessment of the severity that's correlated with inflammatory and non-inflammatory lesions.
And this is for face too, right? Got it. Okay.
So it goes from 0 to 4, with 0 being completely clear and normal. Grade 1 being almost clear. This is usually a non-inflammatory lesion, usually has 0 inflammation. The second one will have maybe just a few inflammatory. The moderate will have much more inflammatory lesions that can also have like kind of that pus and that deeper almost cyst. Then severe is actually, it's kind of the worst of it. And they actually note even nodulocystic lesions. So these are deeper, bigger. They are looking at surface area, the size, the redness. So that's how they're looking at on that scale. And I do have a picture here to show you a visual of what that looks like. And as you can see, in terms of severity of 4, you're almost seeing like almost a sense of that darkening bruising that's happening just because it's involves much deeper layers of the skin. Whereas 3 is really still feels like just general, like much more redness. So hopefully that gives people an idea of how you can assess. And Gloria and I would say that once you start hitting the 3 is when it's a good time to start seeking out a derm. Yeah, just because anything that's inflammatory usually can spring up a lot of unwanted issues and stuff. It's usually going to take much longer. So that's where we think a derm partner is helpful.
Yeah, and also the longer an acne breakout stays in the inflammatory stage, like in the 3s and 4s, the more likely you're going to have issues post acne.
Yes.
In terms of scarring, pigmentation potentials, it all gets worse. So
totally. And then we said they want to pair with a pimple count. So I did find one that I thought was kind of interesting, also graded from 1 to 4. And then 1 being fewer than 10, and then 4 being more than 50. And this is actually per half face because, I mean, sometimes a lot of people have much more breakouts. So this will be a lot easier. So again, like we say, the reason why I think it's good, I kind of agree with the FDA to have both, is because some people will have like one red inflammatory lesion.
Yeah, one very angry one.
Right? I think sometimes you get it.
I do. Yeah. I don't break out one single, but if I have a pimple, it's going to be deep and angry. And there was one time I broke out right between my my eyebrows, and it was so big. It was like a unicorn horn for 4 days. It was just like boop.
It's funny you say that because sometimes I will like feel conscientious about it, and I'll tell Adam, I'll be like, my horn is growing. He's like, it's a cute horn.
Oh no.
Yeah. So yes, we all been there. So yeah. So that's where, like, obviously Gloria would not be going to a derm because she doesn't need to. So this is where pairing that count with the severe, like the how much inflammatory versus non-inflammatory lesions you're having will give you a better picture of a way to calculate. And then we would say probably, like, again, if you're in this like grade 3 to 4 where you're looking at maybe 25 to 50 on face. I actually even think like sometimes a grade 2 could be, depending on the type of lesion. So this is where, like, yeah, that could help you. And another thing that I think is kind of nice when you think about it this way is that when you want to monitor how you're improving, just start kind of keeping a general tab of per breakout. How many do you get? Then you get a sense of, are you improving over time? Because like we've said before, nothing's going to go away. You're not going to have a clear face magically, in 2 weeks. It's a process. And the goal is always to just break out less and less. So having that count, monitoring the type of lesion will give you a better sense of, are you doing better? Yeah. And not getting too frustrated. So yeah. And then other than that, I think we actually had an asterisk for basically if you've just been struggling for too long.
Yeah. If you're really lost, or it just feels like, okay, it's not terrible, but it's very persistent, definitely time to call a derm. Yeah. And sometimes just like, you might not even need prescription. You might just need someone to kind of handhold you and guide you to the most effective over-the-counter options you may have. But either way, it's time to get someone to help.
Totally. Cool. All right. Now it's time. Now that you know that going in, let's actually build your acne routine. Starting off with the most important thing.
Your main squeeze. We have an actives breakdown blog post. We call it the highest level of actives, your main squeeze, meaning that these are your heavy hitters. These will be core ingredients tackling your whatever skin concerns you are, in this case, acne. But these are also ones that may or may not come with side effects that may cause some level of irritation, dryness. So what we mean is your routine should kind of cater around it, right? So for example, in the acne category, we would consider adapalene or BPO, or maybe the two as a combo to be your main squeeze. A tretinoin, like something prescription, is definitely your main squeeze. And what that means is, let's say you are on a tretinoin regimen and you kind of want to also use BPO. And that's a can of worms. That's a bad example. You also want to use salicylic acid. And you realize you're starting to figure out that that pairing makes you really dry. So we would say get rid of the sal acid and cater around making your skin happy with the tretinoin. So this is what we mean by your main squeeze.
Totally. So Gloria, how do we feel about telederms?
So nowadays, other than going to the actual physical derm to get a tretinoin prescription, there's a lot of companies now that do acne telederms. So fill a questionnaire, sometimes take some selfies. So companies like Curology, Apostrophe are big players in this field, and you can get your tretinoin journey. I don't get acne, so I didn't walk through the whole telederm journey. I almost think about it as like derm light that can be good enough for most people.
I think that's a great way of putting it.
And it beats a bad derm because we've also heard of stories of people going in and the derms are maybe a little dismissive and not very cognizant of more subtle details of this person's conditions. I would say that's where I was slotted, but it does, based on what I know, after a while, the way it tracks progress, maybe it's like not, you shouldn't consider it as like your long-term plan. If you need someone to like really be there for you for the next couple of years, especially if you're considering something more serious like Accutane that you can't get through telederm, that's where the limitations are.
Yeah, I think derm light is such a good way of putting it, because Gloria's absolutely right. A bad derm will set you back a lot of time, right? But a good derm, what comes with that is a person that knows your progress and history. Yeah. And then also just will be able to answer all your questions, you know, when you, let's say, had a bad breakout after, 6 months of use, you know? And just, I think that the thing about telederms is you can get a prescription very quickly, but how you'll be able to evolve from that initial prescription, it feels like you're still lacking that personalization that they're actually trying to solve.
I am also starting to think that all these types of companies, allegedly, I'm not saying they do this. I'm just saying that I am sure that some of those customer service, how you're doing, checking out progress, people are run by ChatGPT now.
Yeah.
Just a theory I have.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Oh, we should bring the foil hat back.
Yeah, that's my tinfoil hat theory.
Yeah, I love it.
Not proven. Don't come after me. I'm not saying that's what they do.
Yeah. So anyways, we would say, if, let's say you haven't found your derm love yet, then yeah, might be worth a shot. But still keep looking, because they'll be great for and also, let's be real, we should all be getting our annual skincare checkup, our skin cancer checkups and whatnot. So
I'm embarrassed to say it's been probably a good 2.5 years for me.
Yeah. When we were at L'Oreal, it used to happen.
They come through with a cart. And
yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Anyways. Cool. All right. So that's your main squeeze. We are going to move on to the second group, which we would say are your 3 sidekicks that you'd like to have in your life.
Number 1 is a good soothing serum. One of the 4 main underlying issues with acne is inflammation. And it tends to be another one of those vicious cycles that inflammatory acne can lead to more post-acne issues like pigmentation and scarring. And also inflammation can lead to even more acne, more breakout as well. So this is, and on top of that, a lot of acne actives can be a little irritating. The tretinoins for sure. Even the sal acid sometimes can be a little drying. So making sure your skin barrier is taken care of while you're on acne routine is very important.
It'll make your acne journey a lot less painful. So, for products, obviously we're going to give our Aquafix a shout out because of the lovely amount of manicasticide and asiaticacide we add in there, plus some really great humectants. Other ones that you can look at is SkinCeutical.
I was gonna toot the Aquafix for
Oh my god, please do.
horn just a little more.
Of course.
It's also 100% actually oil free. That doesn't make Victoria claw her eyes out. What that means is if you're prone to excess sebum production, like you're worried about that midday shine, and you want something hydrating that doesn't contribute to that, Aquafix is a great layering piece during the day. We would recommend always sunscreening, but that means you're already getting your fill of oil from your sunscreen, so that's why we suggest pairing it with something oil-free like Aquafix.
Yes. Thanks, Gloria.
And that concludes Aquafix hour. Anyway, next.
Other ones that you can look at is SkinCeutical's Phytocorrective Gel. And then also if you like a mask moment, their Phytocorrective Mask, Gloria swears
I
by.
really like that one.
And then others you can look at are even like Dr. Jart's Cica Repair Serum. So that is a great category to kind of supplement your main squeeze, and especially onboarding your main squeeze. And then, of course, the second group of sidekicks is your other actives.
Ooh, number one, azelaic acid. I think that one's really interesting to me because it has great data on both acne and hyperpigmentation.
Mm-hmm.
It almost feels like it almost has that reputation, right? Like, oh, have you tried azelaic acid? It's super effective. We've complained about this active a few times. One of them being, it's like the anti-niacinamide. Niacinamide is like super chemist friendly. A donkey can formulate with niacinamide. You just put it in and it'll be fine. Maybe not a donkey.
Donkeys don't even have fingers.
All right, maybe raccoons can formulate with niacinamide. But azelaic acid is the opposite of that. It's not soluble in anything. That's why you always get it in that kind of white paste.
Pretty paste.
It's a suspension. And sometimes that comes with a lot of formulation challenges. And a lot of times that's why azelaic acid are in formulas that only have azelaic acid as an active ingredient. You can't have a cocktail with it. And also most of the paper and the data on it is at the 20% level. There are very, very few products you can get on the market that has that level. You're going to have to rely on maybe a 10% for the most part to use day and night. So that's why even though it has a lot of strong data and some people swear by it for as a standalone, like saying that it's good enough as a standalone acne marker, we would put this in a supplementary active category.
Yeah, I was also going to say, as a chemist, not confession, but personal anecdote, I have had very little luck with azelaic acid.
Oh, interesting.
To be fair, I have never had a prescription 20% azelaic acid formula, but the 10% topicals, we actually even recommend you could use it morning and night, just double up on the amount. But I don't know if it's also because I don't love the format it comes in. I never like suspensions, but I just feel like I've never seen myself have like I didn't see a lot of pigmentation improvement. And I also feel like it's more for pigmentation than acne. But anyways.
Also,
Laura keeps winking at me, so it's very distracting.
The sunscreen is crazy runny and it's getting my eye. And
okay, moving on.
Classic secondary category for acne care is all your chemical exfoliants. Salicylic acid is the OTC ingredient. You'll see it at 0.5 to 2% in your acne topical gels. But don't forget your other AHAs. You might, even though AHAs are not positioned directly for acne care, but cell turnover is still a very, very important part of taking care of your acne.
Definitely. So actually, don't forget Mandelic actually does have some nice acne data behind it. But there's nothing wrong with finding other AHAs if you feel like BHA doesn't work out for you. So yeah. Otherwise, there is another category of active we should probably talk about. We're just going to tell the FDA to, if you are listening, to mute the next 5 minutes of this podcast.
Turn off. Nothing to see here.
There is a rising category of read between the line actives that you might find every now and then.
Yeah, I think the research in this category is generally interesting. A lot of times they'll say, oh, blah, blah, blah is lacking. Like tretinoin is lacking because it's irritating, prescription only. Salicylic acid works ain't okay, you know. Therefore, we need more and better acne ingredients. Wonderful. But at the end of the day, because they're not approved acne ingredients, and the FDA does regulate acne ingredients, but it's expensive to actually register these things as drugs or OTC ingredients.
Take a lot of time too.
So for the most part, what they do instead is they dance around the red tape a little bit, do a little bit of this number.
Yeah, they dance like hard. And probably the best examples of this would be, you guys might have heard the cult favorite Tower 28 spray. Another brand called Strike Club, we actually know the founders of. You'll see that their claims and lingo, they basically suggest acne benefit, but don't say acne or breakouts or any of that.
Don't say the A word. Nothing to see here.
So, for example, in the Tower 28 spray, and mind you, this is the active ingredient that is getting touted now as a hypochlorous acid. The claim is that it's an anti-inflammatory, which actually I don't know how they're using that. But anyways, antibacterial that also helps with defending your skin from harmful bacteria, reducing redness and soothing irritation. Don't say acne. And then also, if you look at this before and after, methinks it helps with acne.
Yeah, it's very clear based on the BNAs what it's saying that it does. But it didn't say it, so,
Dancing. We're still dancing, So that's a great example. And then Strike Club is actually even more careful about their lingo. Their active they use is sodium hypochlorite. So it's another like oxidized chlorine. And their Calm Down moisturizer, the way to describe it is a gentle moisturizer that also keeps skin looking clear.
Ooh, I love it. I love the whole nothing, just clear and happy.
What's the word? Clarifying. That's what they like to use. So, I'd say these two are like good examples of like reading between the lines. So trying not to make hard acne claims, but could be beneficial. So this is where we think this is going to be like a new arena of stuff to look at.
Yeah, I personally think I would try them.
Yeah.
There's nothing. Yeah, if you're on a regimen, they're positioned to be more gentle than say a tread. So they should layer well with your main squeeze, and it doesn't hurt to try.
Yeah. Then there's actually a new category of just don't care. They really don't care. So phage technology is something that's really interesting at looking at basically trying to balance out our flora of our skin. This is more in the microbiome realm. And there are two brands that are looking at this. It's Phyla and Ellis Day Skincare. You don't really have to read between the lines here. It's straight up like acne fighting phage serum. This technology is very new. They are actually looking into it, and they know that they are actually looking at the diversity of the flora through DNA sequencing. So this technology for us is actually very interesting. But I just kind of like how it's just straight up like to treat acne.
Just like, hey, this is acne. Bite us, FDA.
Anyways, FDA not listening still, right? So anyways, but we think this is kind of a cool category to look at.
Yeah, and for those of you who like just to jog everyone's high school biology memories, a phage is basically a bacteriophage. It's a virus that destroys bacteria. And if you can target your unwanted bacteria, such as C. acnes, you can achieve a much better balance. I think it sounds very interesting theory and definitely a lot of promise in that category. But again, just straight up ignoring the red tapes on claims, very ballsy.
Yeah. And also just want to say that the phage technology they use in the formula is not actually live culture. They use the vesicle as kind of a carrier, and they use kind of that surface coating to kind of interact with the flora. And that's how they're able to kind of see that improvement in diversity. So just so people are like, it's not real.
We're not putting live organisms on your face to eat your C. acnes. Because what could go wrong?
Yeah. So anyways, that's the sidekicks. And of course, the third, we obviously have to say sunscreen still is a big part of the acne routine, and especially in preventing those post-acne marks, hyperpigmentation, and scarring. Yeah, Gloria, any tips there?
Don't use something really runny and won't go into your eyes. It is not worth it. But other than that, texture is king.
Yes.
Whatever you like to use, want to reapply is the way to go. Refer back to the past 2 episodes.
Yes.
We did quite a bit of tests on sunscreens, how much to apply, and what to look for in general.
Yep. And also, if you really struggle, there's nothing wrong with an SPF 30.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Finally, so the last thing to end on before we wrap this episode, it's also, you guys might have a question of, okay, I kind of know how to treat acne, maybe. What about post-acne care? And what about all of these post-acne marks that I have now? I think Gloria asked a great question about this last time, is when does that start? And how does your routine change? Well, the good news is you might not actually have to do very much. There are a couple clinicals that looked at long-term use of adapalene and BPO, this combination for acne scar prevention. And there are actually 2 studies that looked at this. They looked at a combination of 0.3% adapalene with 2.5% BPO, and then lower amount of adapalene, 0.1% adapalene with 2.5% BPO. And they used it for 6 months.
Oh, that's a pretty decent duration.
Totally. And good size too. The 0.3% adapalene test subject size was about 67 subjects. And they did find that what they did was they had the subjects start using this and these subjects are screened for having acne and post-acne scarring.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to see compared to the placebo candidates, like how their post-acne scarring looked after 6 months. And they did find that it did prevent future scarring and also treated existing acne. So it's kind of a good sign, basically saying that if you stay the course, especially in this scenario, obviously for adapalene BPO, but you stay the course and are consistent with your treatments in treating acne, it can actually help with future scarring. So
you said both concentrations of adapalene worked?
Yes. And 0.1 saw the similar effect, obviously not the same to the same extent, but also improvement as well.
That's that's super interesting study. Definitely stay the course. And especially when you see your acne lesions start to die down, it is not time to stop the routine yet.
Yeah.
Just carry on for a little longer.
Yeah, definitely. But otherwise, that's it. That's the end of the Meatz.
All right, we'll see you next time. You can find us I was about to end too fast. You can find us at our website on chemistconfessions.com. You can write to us at info@chemistconfessions.com. Or you can DM us on our Instagram at chemist.confessions or comment directly on this video, and we will see you next time on the cleanser episode.
Woohoo! Otherwise, thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.